Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Catalyst webinar series presented by the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA. The Catalyst webinar series is a bi-weekly educational platform for creating success and change in your club and career. We're very excited to have one of our partners on the Catalyst this morning. We have Players First. It is the only customer experience management solution designed specifically for golf clubs. We've got Natalie Schmidt. She's a national regional sales manager for Players First. And we also have Peter Smith joining us this morning. He is the Senior Vice President and General Manager for Players First. Peter is a seasoned high technology leader with more than 30 years of experience in software and hardware development, global strategic sales operations, industry and marketing programs. His experience ranges from small startups to Fortune 500s. And he's been in senior leadership roles in Australia. He's Australian born. He's been in Europe and here in the United States. He's been with Players First as their Senior Vice President and General Manager since 2017. And he is a graduate mechanical engineering from the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia. And he got his master's degree from the Thunderbird School of Global Management after that. Good morning, Peter. Good morning, Natalie. Thank you very much for joining us this morning on the Catalyst webinar series.
Good morning, John.
Teach us all about Players First. It's intriguing. Customer experience management solutions, quantifiably and measurably, there's a demand for that. So we're excited that you're with us this morning and glad that you carved out some time to educate the section.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you having us.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, John, again. And I know on behalf of myself and everybody from the Players First team, we're really excited for this partnership, really excited for this webinar and to be able to educate on what we do. And also, too, we want to thank Eric as well. I know that he has collected some really good information and data over the last couple of years that I think really showcases and represents who we are and the capability of our platform. So with that being said, thank you again, and I will hand it over to Peter.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for spending some time with us. So I thought I'd just kick off and give you a little bit of an update on Players First, who we are and how we got to the US. So we're actually a Danish-based company, believe it or not. We were founded by two customer experience management experts in the field who had a passion for golf. And they really saw an opportunity to bring some of this technology and discipline to the game of golf and started Players First. They developed a software platform which was rapidly adopted by a lot of the European golf federations to capture data on the golfer experience. And that translated into pretty much every European golf federation using Players First as a platform for collecting golfer experience data. And, in general, using that data to elevate the experience and grow the game. So from a North American perspective, we started here in about 2017. We got some pretty rapid success again with big multi-course operators like Troon, the PGA Tour, Touchstone Golf, I think is pretty big in your neck of the woods here. And so that has led us to progressively expanding our business to public and private courses. We also do tournament management as well, which is kind of a newer avenue for us. And most recently expanding into the off-course realm through our partnership with TrackMan. So excited to be here and appreciate everyone joining us. I want to focus on really the customer experience management and essentially, what is it? Why would you want to implement it at your facility, and how can you leverage it to improve your day-to-day operations? So I think John will be moderating the questions, but if you have any, make sure you put them into the chat, and we'll make sure that you get them answered. And I'd also encourage you to stay until the end. We have a special announcement for Southern California PGA members, I think that we'll be very interested in learning about. So make sure you stay until the end. So with that, let me just share my screen here, and we'll get going on the presentation. Okay, so is that coming through, John?
Yes, sir. Perfect.
All right. Let me see if I can advance it. So yeah, I mean, with pretty much any product or service, purchase that you make these days, you're going to get some kind of survey, or you're going to be asked to give you feedback. And the reason for that is, pretty much as this quote kind of says, customer experience management is just so critical for any business today. And the reason is that, the presence of these review sites, pricing transparency means that a lot of the purchasing power has shifted actually to the consumer. So that's why this is so important for every business in today's age. So you've seen a dramatic increase in the use of this kind of technology, and we've all experienced it, right? And the main message here is that really customer experience is probably your key competitive advantage, because everything else tends to be pretty much the same. And if anyone's making a purchase, and I certainly would include myself in this, you're going to read reviews, you're going to look at, what have other people said about this? And because this information is so widely available, it's pretty easy to get an assessment. So that's why this has become such an important factor of in today's business. And Players First is really aimed at trying to, bring this capability to the golf industry and allow them to ensure that their experience that they're delivering is helping generate their business. It looks like Eric has made it on. So continuing to improve that experience that they're delivering. And essentially what it's focused on is something called word of mouth, right? This is, the oldest form of marketing. It's the, buddies telling each other about their experience. And when we look at word of mouth and, player experience in general, there's two main buckets that we put it in. One is what we will call promoters. These are golfers that have had a good experience at the facility. They're telling their friends and family, they're recommending and saying, hey, you ought to come and play at this course. It was great the last time I played it. And these are what we want to increase and grow within our player base, because they're going to recommend you. They're also going to bring other people into the game. And I think, certainly we're seeing this continued kind of uplift from COVID, post-COVID. And a lot of that is because, people are telling each other, hey, come and play golf with me. This is fun. They're also very important because they tend to purchase more. All right, so they are going to, if they've had a good experience, they're going to buy more off you, whether that's more rounds, whether it's more in your retail operation or your food and beverage operation, they're going to stay longer and purchase more. And by using customer experience management and understanding more of the feedback, that's going to help you identify improvements and opportunities. And finally, if you've got a customer, it's much easier to retain a customer than it is to go out and get a new customer. So in terms of cost to serve, they're much lower, and they're much more profitable in terms of your business. So the flip side of this is detractors.
Hey, real quick, can you go back to that last slide?
Yeah.
Why do people that are brought to the game by other people cost less to serve in the first place?
Well, you don't have to acquire them, right? I mean, if you think about the acquisition cost for any customer in a business, you've got to spend a lot of money to maybe go out there and advertise your facility. Maybe you've got to put some incentives in there. But if word of mouth is what's bringing people to your facility, that's essentially costing you nothing. And so I think that's the key. That's the key difference.
Okay, thank you.
So the flip side of promoters are detractors. And, we kind of, a lot of people look at this as, oh, well, these are the problem, this is the problem things. We really don't want to hear about all of this. But the reason that you do want to focus on this is that they do have a very significant impact on your business. So they tend to tell a lot of people, their friends, maybe provide feedback on a rating site or on social media. And so this is kind of a headwind in terms of your operation. So there's always going to be detractors. There's always going to be people that maybe experienced a service gap or had some other reason for not enjoying their experience. But the whole idea here with customer experience management is to understand this dynamic and to minimize it as much as possible. So it's pretty much impossible to get rid of it altogether, and we'll always sort of have a certain amount of those keyboard warriors behind behind their computer, maybe being critical of the operation, but ignore this at your peril, I guess, is the message here. You need to understand what's generating this and minimize it as much as you possibly can. Okay, so some of the benefits of implementing a customer experience management solution, increased retention. So obviously we're on an upswing here. The golf is in a really good place right now. We want to keep that momentum going. We want to retain those golfers. And if you look at historically at the golf industry, we've had some pretty big upswings like this in the past. We had the Tiger kind of period where everyone was really rushing to the game, but we saw that decrease over time. And so in terms of really wanting to keep those post-COVID golfers in the game, we want to make sure that we're delivering a good experience and keeping them engaged. From your own facility perspective, obviously you want to increase your reputation and that word of mouth that you've got out there in the player's mind, and also you want to improve your business efficiency. So we'll come into a little bit more about this, but often what we see with customer experience management and the feedback that you get from golfers is there's a lot of little kind of operational issues that you're probably not even aware of. In fact, most of the people that employ our solution are quite surprised at what they learn when they they start getting this feedback. And it identifies some very easy, low-hanging fruit in terms of improving that overall customer experience. You also want to reduce the customer churn. Obviously, as I said, one of the most difficult things is finding new people, and that usually costs you money. So it's much better to keep the people that you have. And particularly on the private side, what we often hear from members at private courses is that management isn't listening, and there's not a good way or a facilitated, robust way of providing feedback to management. And that's kind of surprising because I think, and John, you might want to weigh in here as well, I think, but a lot of the time there's kind of this silent majority out there that is not really maybe it doesn't feel like they've got a voice. On the flip side, there's the vocal part of the club, which probably interacts very much with the general management, and they tend to dominate the conversation. And John, I don't know if you would agree with that or not.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you bring that up, Peter. Eric and I actually had a conversation last night about the subject because, it's the importance of surveys. You need surveys to be effective and they need to gather the information that you're actually trying to capture. But going off of the consensus and what you hear around the club most times comes from that vocal minority, and it's not an accurate representation of what the club culture really in the direction the club really wants to go in. So it's interesting that you brought that up because Eric and I were talking about that last night in terms of a local club that we both know.
Yeah, no, we see it time and time again, and really, one of the biggest things that this facilitates is that dialogue, and it also needs to be a two-way dialogue. So it's not only members, giving their feedback, but it's also the leadership team at the club engaging back with them on their feedback, and we'll get a little bit more into that later in the presentation. But also this data can be used for decision making. So often there's some opinions, there's some loud voices in the room, but often this data can be used to kind of step back and say, well, what do our customers say? What are they saying? Is it more important for the superintendent to get that new fancy new machine he saw at the PGA show this year? Or do we need to spend more money in the clubhouse? What are the members saying about that kind of stuff? So certainly with a robust set of data, you can make those decisions much more confidently and really have a much firmer basis based on data for making those. And then the continuous improvement in terms of the operation of the facility, and we'll see a little bit like that when Eric gets later on in the presentation. All right, so a lot of what we like to do is to capture the player journey, and I think when people think about a golf experience, they really think about the kind of middle part here. The actual playing, the on-course experience. But there's a lot of stuff that happens both before and after. And so, in terms of customer experience management, what we're trying to measure is this entire experience from the moment they book their round or even hear about the facility to the post round. And so we break it down into various different stages, in which within each one of those stages, what we call touch points. And a touch point is simply just a single interaction on that experience. So it might be, hey, were you greeted when you entered into the facility? How was the starter? What were the course conditions like? So there's a whole range of different touch points that a customer experience management system can measure and give you feedback on. The other point I would make about all of this is that there are different player journeys. So often we tend to think of, a golfer as, it's just someone that arrives at your facility, money in their wallet and a heartbeat, but it's more than that. Some are older, some are younger, some are looking for, a challenging experience. Maybe some are more on like me, the weekend warrior. So these are all different kind of demographics and different filters or different types of players that are going to show up your facility. And understanding how each one of these is feeling about the experience is kind of like the next level in terms of delivering a good experience. Because if you're focused on maybe you're servicing the the more casual golfer, well, you're probably not going to be that interested in the feedback from a low handicap golfer, because they're looking for a different experience. And so by using some of these factors and demographics, you can really kind of hone in on what is that profile, or what is that kind of, what is the golfer that you're actually trying to serve, and optimize the experience for that particular type of golfer. And again, the data and being able to drill into it and understand some of these demographics that are involved in your players is really going to help you optimize that experience. All right, so how do you actually put together a customer experience management system? The first part of it is generally a survey, and we've probably all had experience with something like SurveyMonkey. It's pretty easy to throw some questions out there, get some data back, and the question is, now what do you do with it? And for a lot of golf courses, that's where kind of things really stop. People will get data in a spreadsheet and they don't really know what to do with it or how to interpret the results. They've got a lot of responses, but what does it really mean? So with Players First, what we've tried to do is to enable a full customer experience management system that takes that data, but then gives you the infrastructure and gives you the framework to take that large amount of data, put it in a structured fashion, provide some tools that can turn that data into insights, because that's what it's really all about. When you've got hundreds of responses from your golfers, what does it really mean? What's it telling you? And how do you turn that into initiatives that will improve the experience? And then use that in terms of a kind of a continuous improvement system. So make some changes, and we'll get into that in a little bit further down the presentation. But one of the key metrics we're going to dive into a little bit on the kind of numbers side of this thing. We talked about promoters and detractors. Well, this is the basis of something we call Net Promoter Score. So your Net Promoter Score is just a tool that can manage that can allow you to measure your overall word of mouth. It's really a metric that a lot of industries use to kind of capture that customer experience and their likelihood to recommend. That's basically what it boils down to. And the way it works is the survey will include a question that says, something like, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend? And we've all seen that question before. It's very commonly used. And the way the data is, the Net Promoter Score is calculated is depending upon that score. We arrive at the Net Promoter Score using this formula down the bottom here. So if you had 100 responses, well, first of all, it buckets them into 3 categories. Let's go through that first. So if someone says a 9 or a 10, they're considered a promoter. Conversely, if they're a 0 through 6 on that scale, they're considered a detractor. And if they're sitting in the middle, a 7 or an 8, they're considered a passive. So the way the Net Promoter Score is calculated is just simply from a data set, it's the percentage of promoters, in other words, those that gave a 9 or a 10, minus the percentage of detractors. So if you had 100 responses with 60% of them being promoters and maybe 40% of them being detractors, your Net Promoter Score would be 60 minus 40, which is 20. So this is not a number that people get very confused about, because they think like, wow, if my Net Promoter Score is only 40, that doesn't sound very good. Well, that's actually probably pretty typical in a lot of different industries. So it's a very, very different scale. But what it does do is provide a very standard way of measuring that word of mouth and that customer experience. So there's some interesting work that's been done around this. There's even I think an ETF that actually tracks companies that have high Net Promoter Scores, because that's a kind of a leading indicator to success. But we've done some analysis. This is from the Finnish Golf Association. They're longtime users of Players First, so we have a lot of data on Net Promoter Score. And we also got some financial data from them and rounds. And we did a 3-year study, and we actually found that if you can improve your Net Promoter Score by around 10 points, so maybe take it from 40 to 50, that would lead to about a 7% increase in the number of rounds played. So it does have a significant impact on basically your utilization and bottom line. So this is kind of very interesting in terms of quantifying what that impact can be for golf. So how do you put it into action? As I said, the first step was really to engage, and that's typically through the survey process, but then to analyze, look at that data, leverage it into making some actions, and then monitoring the impact. So a kind of a closed loop system here, where you're continually monitoring the feedback and looking for ways to improve the experience. So a key question is always, well, how do we go about this? What kind of frequency should we be, asking people for information? And, I think the answer here is that it really depends. So if you're in a private club situation, the typical kind of frequency is there's maybe one annual member survey that goes out that captures, information based on that past season. But we think that that's probably, the minimal. What's really a recommendation for private clubs would be to also augment that kind of annual member survey with maybe what we call pulse surveys. So these are much shorter surveys focused on a particular member experience. So it could be a food and beverage dining experience, or it could be the last time they play golf, or what about when they visited the fitness area. So supplementing an annual member survey with more frequent, much shorter, maybe not going out to all the members, but just based more around their experience at particular points of time throughout the season. And this gives kind of more of a continual feedback mechanism for you to understand, hey, how is the club operating? If you're in a kind of a public facility, we actually integrate with T-sheets. So we're trying to make this as simple as possible and automate. So we'll get a data feed from a T-sheet provider, and that will generate the surveys that go out automatically to the guests that have played the previous day. And we can do things like filtering to make sure that if you've got regular players, we're not hitting them, again and again with a survey invitation. So that's really nice from the viewpoint of, first of all, you don't have to, no care and feeding, involved in that. You're just getting a continual stream of data from your facility that gives you the kind of the data to make those decisions. And you don't have to do a lot of work. You're already busy doing a lot of other things, but this is just giving you the data. And also we can do things like real-time alerts on specific conditions. So if you've got, for example, a detractor response that comes in, that can kind of highlight, you can get a notification to say like, hey, there's been some kind of service gap or an opportunity to improve the experience, and reach out to that particular guest and address the issue. And then we do also have more in-app things. So we're partnered with Gallus Golf. If you're using them, we have a survey that is basically a pop-up that will come in the Gallus Golf, very short 3-question survey. So different ways that you can actually capture that data. Then the next thing is analyzing it, and this is where it gets tough for a lot of people because you've got a lot of data, and what does it all mean? So what we've tried to do within Players First is to provide the tools which kind of allow you to understand what that data is telling you and identify what's important versus what's working fine and doesn't need any attention. So we characterize touch points, those individual measurements, as into these categories like underperforming or needs immediate attention. And we can do that by doing correlations on the data. So we can go into the data, and by doing these correlations with Net Promoter Score, we can tell you the particular touch points that are most highly leveraged against Net Promoter Score. In other words, the ones that are really shifting that needle. Kind of a whole another topic, but the bottom line here is by using this kind of dashboard approach, you can immediately see where you've got to focus and what's working fine and doesn't really need any work. And then benchmarking. So a lot of the time you get a number, like you can calculate a Net Promoter Score number. It's relatively simple to get at, but then what does that mean? Is that kind of good? Is that, how does that stack up against maybe your other facilities, similar facilities in your area or on a national basis? And the way that it Players First we've implemented this is actually everyone is using essentially the same set of questions. So we can benchmark right down to a touch point and give information on how that particular touch point, how your performance is relative to our overall either national or even a custom benchmark. So that gives you,
Peter,
go ahead.
Back on that previous slide, can you give an example or two of how you determine if an aspect of your business is overperforming?
Yeah, so part of it is it's again this correlation is looking at how closely correlated a particular touch point is to Net Promoter Score. So let's look at probably an easy one to understand. So greens, everyone wants great greens. So that's always, or course conditions in general are always pretty highly correlated with Net Promoter Score. That means that is an important measurement, and we need it to be high satisfaction, right? Because if it's not high satisfaction, your Net Promoter Score is going to come down. So those, when we plot these, you can see this little plot that's here. We plotted on the further to the right on the horizontal axis, the higher the impact is on Net Promoter Score. And what we have on this y-axis is satisfaction. So if something is high in terms of its impact on Net Promoter Score, it should be ideally in this top right-hand quadrant of this little graph here. I don't know if you can see my mouse moving over there, but so it has to be high satisfaction. Now, if it's high impact and low satisfaction, that's how we flag it, right? So that's why these dots are red, because we can tell from the data that they're high impact on the experience, but the satisfaction is low. Now, conversely, these ones here, they're on the left-hand side of the chart. they're low impact on Net Promoter Score, but they're very high impact. They're very high in terms of satisfaction. So that's why we classify them as overperforming, because basically they're going great. You don't need to do anything there. Just keep doing what you're doing, right?
Oh,
But
so it's not the indicator on overperforming is not an indicator on over allocating resources to something that doesn't move the NPS
NPS.
that much.
Well, you're kind of right there, right? Because you wouldn't put your money, time, attention into this sector here, right? Because it's already doing well. It's already working great. Now, there is a dynamic. You want to focus on these things down here. These are the ones that are causing dissatisfaction. The other caveat with this is that sometimes it can have one of these touch points that's relatively low in terms of priority. But they can migrate across. So, maybe an example is your cart fleet. If your carts are getting old, generally people, well, at least me, I get in a cart, if it's clean and it works, takes me around the course, I'm done, right? I'm happy, right? But if that cart starts to, so generally we see those as being relatively low in terms of overall priority. But if that cart, broke down and maybe it was dirty or whatever, you could see some of those things starting to move across here and become high priority, right? So, but in general, this is where you would be focused on these ones which are high impact and low satisfaction. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and so the other way that you can look at this data is that to actually look at how that you're performing against benchmarks. So we'll have a look at some of this later on the presentation as well. But this gray line here is our benchmark, and this might be your trend over time, in terms of either a touch point, an NPS score, a service area. In this case, we're looking at food and beverage. And so you can also gauge from other facilities, your performance relative to other similar facilities, even down to selecting specific facilities. So if we have a club in the Players First ecosystem and you'd like to benchmark against them, we can provide an anonymized benchmark. So lots of things to do with benchmarking, but again, trying to give you an idea of where you really stand relative to all of the kind of myriad of things that you're trying to manage at a club, and give you some insights into how you're actually performing relative to others and relative to the expectations of your members and guests. All right, so these, so I mentioned before that, a lot of the time when people get into customer experience management, what they realize is that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. And that's why we see, typically across the, various industries, this is not golf specific, but we see the same dynamic in golf as well, that just focusing on a lot of little things that maybe don't require the big, multi-million-dollar, clubhouse renovation. These are generally tend to be very simple things that can be addressed and typically will have very good returns in terms of ROI. So what does, what can you do with this information? Well, the first thing is you can track your results, right, on an ongoing basis. So share those insights with the team. Right. And this is a big part of customer experience management. It really has to be kind of ingrained into the organization and become part of the management framework. So, probably a best practice here is we see a lot of people using this data even to drive performance bonuses and so on. So, Net Promoter Score could be a management objective, and that tends to get a lot of focus on customer experience, as you can probably imagine, but it becomes part of the way that the club or the facility operates. So there could be, a monthly look at the data, what's happening in terms of our customer experience over the last month, where have we got issues, how can we get out in front of those, and so, fix those issues. Understand that the causes for any negative experience or negative feedback that you're getting, and continue to kind of drive these improvements on an ongoing basis. So that's, we talked about revenue impact in terms of the study we did with the Finnish Golf Association. Retention, obviously, again, keeping those people coming back. We've got a lot of golfers in the game right now, but, is your facility getting the, your unfair share of that pie, if you will? And, continuing to attract and retain golfers coming back to your facility as a priority. And then another aspect is customer lifetime value. So, this is an interesting, metric when you look at kind of what is that customer actually delivering over the lifetime and maximizing primarily through retention. Okay, so I'll wrap it up here because we've got some great data and insights from Monarch Beach that I think Eric would like to share. But, essentially customer experience management is something that's new for golf, but it is an easy to deploy cloud-based solution. So, it provides a framework for you to kind of continue to measure that customer experience, develop those insights, and continue to improve the experience that you deliver. Benchmarking and all of these things that can really impact your business in a way that you probably haven't realized before. And just a shameless plug from Players First, we make this very easy to deploy. We've got a lot of integrations with probably the software that you're using right now, and we automate a lot of this so that we're really providing you insights rather than data in a spreadsheet. And
Peter, and you're a well-established management solution company. I mean, you're in 20 countries. You're partnered with some major golf management companies such as Troon. I think Eric's going to speak to that. Good morning, President Lohman. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. And just want to thank Peter for what they do and for supporting us as a section, and also us as a business at Monarch Beach Golf Links, because we are definitely net promoters of theirs and of this type of solution for all properties. So thank you.
Yeah, and I thought, Eric, we're actually showing you some of the data that you've kind of, this is from your dashboard, and this is Net Promoter Score over the past 3 years. So this is kind of a really nice story here. You can see your increase from this kind of the 2021 kind of time frame. The gray line here is our benchmark, and so this is the blue line is your performance. So pretty positive result over the last few years here is I guess if I also look at various other things, we've got a lot of other data here, but it all tells the same kind of story. So I wonder if you can just maybe give us some context or some background around, what's been happening at your facility, and maybe put these numbers in context as to, the things that you've been driving from your operational perspective.
Yeah, no worries, and I appreciate the opportunity. So obviously, when we were introduced to Players First and this type of opportunity for our club, this was, I don't know, over 10 years ago. And, obviously we got set up and we started utilizing it. We also had another resource that came from our resort partner, the Waldorf Astoria Monarch Beach. And they had a similar type of program, not Players First, but very similar, that they sent out to all of their resort guests. So we had, at the exact same time, we started getting a lot of information, a lot of feedback from our golfing clientele. And then we got a lot of feedback from our resort guests that played golf, and potentially, there was some overlap and sometimes it wasn't. And then obviously about the same time, there was this advent of social media feedback that you would get like through Yelp and TripAdvisor, Golf Advisor, and those resources. So, like most things, we kind of looked into what it was and how we could potentially take advantage of it. And then we dove into the statistics and the analytics, and we dove into some of the comments that we got. And what we determined from it was that there was a wealth of information, and then there was a great amount of opportunity. And we had to create a culture, which we think we've done a fairly good job at, where you have to be, and I think Peter spoke to it, that you have to be humble enough to know that the information is positive and negative, and that it's both beneficial and could be, if not taken care of correctly, it could be actually detrimental in some cases, because you are receiving some raw feedback and a large amount of that feedback. It's not like if you just survived on Yelp, for example, you would just get one review every month or so. We're talking about hundreds of reviews in a given month, depending on the volume of play and the number of participants that responded. And in the case of Monarch, we're talking hundreds and hundreds based on all the other avenues that we were utilizing. So Peter, what we did is we set a goal because, you know, we saw a trend that was forming, and we tried to dive deeper into what was creating the trend. And then we created some goals that we wanted the net promoter score to be at a certain level that we felt made sense. It was, you know, obviously an improvement from the prior year. It was an improvement compared to our, you know, the benchmarking. We also cared kind of how we were benchmarked not only to like the comp set in the marketplace, but the comp set nationally, but also the comp set within our own company, because obviously, as we all know, we get compared to each other in our own companies. So that was something that that we looked into. So I think, you know, my answer to this question would be, we adapted this philosophy and we embraced it, and then we used it as a goal setting mechanism. And then I use it as a mechanism to hold my team accountable. So when we get feedback, you know, we do it with the idea that, you know, we want to address it professionally and quickly. We have like a 24-hour rule for responding. We want to make sure that we're professional when we do respond. We want to make sure that we're gracious in the sense that potentially we would, you know, offer a refund or a rebate or a discount in the future or some sort of concession. So, I mean, there had to have been like a very structured plan in place for us to take advantage of this the right way. And when we did that, we started to see some elevation in those numbers. And again, what you're looking at here is a grid. And I can tell you that I love statistics. I don't know if Peter even knows this, but I took it at UCLA. I thought it was like one of the only classes I attended, and it might have been one of the only A's I got. So I kind of like it. So, but I also read more into it. So I see a bell curve or a curve that goes up here. And I do think that's attributed to a lot of things. I also know that COVID fell in this space. And I know that 2021 was kind of the volume of rounds that we all had. And then as you kind of dissipated the rounds, you know, service kind of got layered back in, and so did conditions and things of that nature. So there are some other factors that play into this, but knowing all of this and seeing it in this format that Players First can provide to us, it helps validate some opinions that we have, that we share with ownership, that we share with our senior managers at Troon. And this is just helps us evident what we think already based on just like, you know, kind of what we already know. You know, I think, you know, and I'll stop because I know there's probably gonna be some questions or some other slides, but you know, if you think about like the movie Moneyball, for example, right? I don't think golf is any different. You know, there's a lot of golf pros. I was one that was this, you know, I was in that same boat where I felt like, you know, I'd been in here at the space for 20 plus years. I listen to my customers. I golf, so I kind of know what goes on. I eat, I know how we serve. I know what, you know, what it tastes like. I kind of felt like I could sort of just do this all on my own and just kind of tell people what I think the product should be. But that doesn't always work. And this is a great mechanism so that you truly know what the general public thinks, what the consensus of the group thinks, not just what you think. So it validates your own opinion, but then it gives you the backup that's needed when it comes to speaking to your team, your management team, your hourly employees. It also gives you the backup that you need to talk to your guests when it comes up, when a question arises or there's an issue. And it also gives you the backup to talk to ownership when it comes to like your weekly, monthly reporting, your budget requests, your capital requests, and things of that nature. So like I say, I'm a promoter. I'm not really just a promoter. I embrace this religiously because I think it's something that if you didn't do, that you just would be missing out. And for those that are doing it, we're just going to step over you and take advantage of it.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I mean, I think that's, you know, you brought up so many best practices in terms of customer experience management, in terms of integrating the team, in terms of, you know, looking at the data. I think your point about, you know, a lot of us kind of think we know what the right answer is, and we might be 100% correct. But when you're talking to other stakeholders and you've got data based evidence of that, it's a whole different story. And I think that's another powerful thing in terms of, you know, being able to drive change and get support for the initiatives that you want to do. So I know that we're running out of time here, and I want to make sure that we have some time for questions. I'll just run through some of the other results from Monarch Beach. So course conditions, food and beverage, retail, they're all showing the same kind of trends. So really a great kind of case study, if you will, mini case study on customer experience and how it can impact kind of the results at a facility. So I then just like to open it up, John, if we've got any questions, be happy to address them.
On behalf of the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA, we want to thank you for putting together the presentation and carving out the time to be with us this morning. I believe that you had a special promotion just for the section for the members that were joining us this morning on the call.
Yes, I do. So we are very excited to be working with Southern California PGA, and we've put together this program. We'd really like to invite your members to participate in a free trial. What we find is that, you know, people may be a little bit hesitant, but I think, you know, if you experience Players First and how we can bring these insights to your facility, you know, I think you're going to see a great impact. And so we've put together this 90-day free trial. It's for any kind of our surveys. If you want tournament surveys or a guest survey, member survey, you can sign up for a subscription and try it out. And then if you do decide to go to a paid subscription, we have a 15% discount for Southern California PGA members. So if you would like to take advantage of that, there is the QR code on the screen right now, which will allow you to get in contact with us. We can have a discussion around your facility and what you're trying to do and how we can structure that trial. But I think we really would like to encourage your membership to take advantage of this and look forward to working with more and more of your members as we go forward.
Thank you, Peter. That's very generous, and appreciate you putting that together. For all the 54 PGA members that are on this morning's Catalyst, we are going to be sending out the recording of this morning's presentation that Peter and Natalie put together, along with their contact information, so you could conveniently reach out to them and connect. I don't have any other questions. Eric, do you have any parting thoughts?
No, I just appreciate this opportunity to, and obviously we're well versed, but on behalf of the membership, I think, you know, we do a fairly decent job of educating people on a lot of different things. But when you come into some of the best practices for operations, I think that we're doing a little better job ourselves of showcasing, you know, vendors that have great ideas like this, where you can learn a little bit more about your operation, be a little bit more efficient. You know, definitely benchmark yourself against some competitors. I just appreciate John and Peter, and obviously Natalie, the opportunity to learn a little bit more and to share this information, because as an industry, as a section, is the more of this we embrace, the better overall the quality of golf is in the marketplace, the satisfaction of all of our golfers out there. So, you know, as a whole, holistically, if we all embrace this type of practice, I think the game would be in a better shape than it is today. So thank you for that opportunity.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Peter. And thank you to the section membership for joining us this morning. All the PGA members on this morning's Catalyst will receive 1 PDR credit for attending the Players First webinar. Again, Peter, Natalie, on behalf of the section's Education Committee, thanks for joining us this morning. And Eric, President Lohman, thanks for joining us and giving the testimonials and sharing your experiences. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, guys.